it. Let me just try one more time. Shut down this crocker shite technology. Excuse my French.
We are live, but we're experiencing a few technical difficulties at the moment with Donato. He's struggling to hear us. We can all hear each other, but Donato can't hear us. So we're going to try and just go with it anyway and see how this goes. So basically, I've got my guests on today. So welcome to the show. We'll start with Katie. Welcome.
Hello, Rich. Thanks for having me.
That's all right, no problem. And we've got Andy in the house.
Good evening. Sorry, I'm still laughing from so.
I could not have pressed go live at a more inconvenient time.
Hooray! I can hear you.
Oh, thank God.
Raw.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, I think we just went live, Donato, just as you were dropping a few expletives. So it's a great start, and we'll just start as we mean to go on.
Absolutely. Technology. Yes, the 21st century. What the world is coming to.
Oh, there we go. At least we hear each other now. So, welcome everybody. Welcome to the channel, baze187. I'm Rich, and this is a live stream chat. You've got me, Katie, Andy, and Donato. We're all going to be talking today about marathon tapering, because obviously it's coming up for the London Marathon and it's a topical thing to speak about. So don't forget to get your questions in the live chat early on during the conversation so that we can address any questions that you might have about tapering. And let's get into it. So we were going to talk today about 4 different sort of types of runners that are coming up to their taper. And the first one would be the runner that's followed a training plan. They've hit all the sessions they need to hit. They've not been ill. They've not been injured. And they feel like everything's gone absolutely perfectly. And they're feeling really ready to take on this marathon. And how should that type of runner approach tapering? So, Andy, do you want to kick this one off?
I can do.
Andy. That's him.
Sorry?
Oh, no.
You just described Andy pretty much. Okay, yeah.
That's basically Andy's question. Go for it, mate.
This training block, for me in particular, hasn't been. I got ill in the beginning, and I've had a few niggles over these last couple of weeks, which I've been nursing myself through. But last year, I did a half marathon training block, and I ran 16 weeks uninterrupted, no injuries, nothing whatsoever. It was madness. I think I missed one session because I was tired. That wasn't through injury. Training plan went perfectly. Ironically, I got injured during the race. But in terms of approaching the taper, it was really, I felt really great leading into the taper. I felt really good, confident, maybe overly confident. And about double-edged sword, it's about kind of understanding your limits. And I think when you have such a good training block, you start to dream, you start to think, well, if the stars align, then maybe I could do this. But obviously, you still have to keep very grounded. So I think the best approach is just to keep in mind what you've been doing, the paces you've been hitting in training. Don't yourself, still be of the mindset of, I'm going to start out with the intention of doing what I set out to time-wise, if you have a time goal. And if during the race, the way they do, the stars do align and you feel like you can kick on, by all means, go for it. But I've been in that position where I've had this amazing training block. I've tapered quicker than I should have done because I thought, why not? And it's gone completely peaked on. So I think it's just about balancing it. It's about being confident in your ability, knowing you've done the training, but not getting too ahead of yourself.
Yeah, that's a good shout, because obviously being well prepared and being confident does not guarantee a perfect marathon.
Exactly.
And you've still got to work hard on the day. But Katie, how would you approach your tapering if your training's gone perfectly?
I had this experience last year with the London Marathon. My training had gone pretty well, and I was in a good position. So it led me into my taper feeling quite confident. And then I also then had a bad race after it too. It was London, it was the heat wave. So I'm always the mindset with the taper is that less is more. Because if you've had a really good training block, you've done every session, you've not missed anything off your plan. So you're going to probably have been very active. So when you go into your taper, the intensity drops, frequency starts to drop quite quickly, and you begin to worry. So you just need to keep confident in your ability, that you've done everything you can. Because in my opinion, in the last few weeks leading up to race day, less is more. You do less, you're going to get more rewards on race day, because when you're in your peak, you do a lot and you're going to feel tired. You might have some really good long training runs, but you're going to feel fatigued. So if you've had a really good training block, you're going to be very active, and then the reduction is going to put you into the paranoia. But it's all about just looking after yourself. Don't, as well, if you've had a really good training block, then you might start to neglect the smaller and finer things, like your stretching, like your foam rolling. You might overlook hydration or nutrition. So it's like not to get too confident with it, I guess. That's like the biggest thing, is not to, and like Andy says, if you've got a race plan, stick to that plan. Because it's all gone well, don't over stretch yourself. Work towards the target that you think is possible.
Yeah, and you mentioned the famous word paranoia there. So anyone who's watching this who's currently tapering for their marathon, tell us about your paranoia. What are you worried about right now, and what's freaking you out in your taper? And so Donato, what about you, mate? You've had a good couple of marathons where you've done really well and everything's gone well for you. So how did you approach your taper?
To be honest, as has really been said, I mean, the main one was with Chicago, and the key thing there, as Katie touched on and Andy, is just to stick with the basics, not to basically not to deviate. Not as you start getting more energy, and because you are cutting back on the miles and the training, is you start feeling really good. But I just kept calm and collected, and in the race. For those who watched that race at Chicago, I kept calm and collected through the race and felt comfortable all the way through. So it's just stick to the plan, you know, whether it be tapering time, whenever, it's stick with the plan and enjoy the process, really. And to be honest, paranoia doesn't come in. I think you know, that whilst our legs and things might be twitching, if that's paranoia, then yeah, I've got it. But I think a lot of it is psychological, and depending on how, I would recommend getting off social media weeks before the race, because there's lots of things flying around, which is doesn't help if you have getting paranoia, and reading what other people are saying is just keep it close, I would say. So follow that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does, and all of that is good advice. And I think one thing I would say about tapering, especially when you're feeling great and it's all gone well, is if you're cutting down the training load for those last couple of weeks, you suddenly have all this extra time on your hands that you didn't have before. Right, yeah. The temptation then is to think, well, I know, I'll go and paint that fence, or I'll go and fix that thing that needed fixing, and do all these jobs that I've not been able to do because I've been training. And obviously you end up expending loads of energy doing that. That's probably one of the worst things you can do. And it's kind of like the boredom gets to you, isn't it? And you want to do all these extra things and keep yourself busy, but try and resist that temptation, I think, in the taper period. If you've done really well, just, you know, relax and know that you need all that energy for race day, really.
Exactly.
All right, so that's the first kind of type of person that we spoke about. I'm just looking in the live chat. Has there been any questions? You guys have noticed any?
Just picking up on an interesting thing, because there's a lot of people doing, proper joggers commented about doing Brighton, and it was hillier than expected, which is, my friend did it last year, Lee. He said exactly the same thing. He ran Manchester this year. I know a lot of people that are in London this year, like the proper jogger and others, but it wasn't their target marathon. And so their target marathon was something else, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before. So there's an interesting point there of how you recover between marathons. I know it's quite a popular thing to do, running sort of London, but people don't bank on getting into London, so they book another marathon. And so he's got 2 weeks between 2 marathons. I know, Donato, last year you did Boston, then London, and I mean, temperature-wise, that was extreme, one extreme to the other. But I guess just recovering between the two, and also you've got to, I'll ask Donato this question, I'm sure you've got to probably prioritize one over the other and take a serious one that you've been training for, and one as an enjoyment factor. Was that the case for you, or how do people do that?
Well, unfortunately for me, because I was going in with an injury, it was just to get through both of them. I think we might jump on to the second point that, or second scenario that Richard was saying. But yeah, the key one for me, and to be honest, your key race is the first one. You can't, I think people who, some do 3, 4, 5, and they'll say the 5th one will be their target one. Hello, let's get real. You'll be totally knackered by the 5th one.
Yeah.
So your key one has to be your first one. You can't say, oh, I'm just going to enjoy 26 miles. Personally, I don't understand that, because you've put your muscles through it. And from my own experience, London, I shouldn't have followed through with that because I hadn't recovered properly. So my legs were just shot to pieces. Hence the very slow time, lots of walking and lots of cramp. So good luck to all those who are doing their second or third. I know that everyone's different. Maybe it's my age, being an old geezer coming up to 60. Maybe some of you young guys can recover quicker, and some people can recover quickly and do go out and enjoy those. But yeah, London for me was more of the just go around the sites, enjoy it. But with hindsight, I don't know whether Rich is going to ask the question of the scenarios of what to do when you're injured. But yeah, it's you prioritize. The first one has to be the priority one.
Yeah.
Your body takes a bashing, unless it's 6 months later. But when it's only a week or 2 weeks, your first one, if you're going for a time, has to be your priority one.
See, that's really interesting because I'm sorry just to jump in there, but Lee, my friend, got into London, but that wasn't his first one he wanted to get into. And he obviously ran Manchester last week or whenever it was. And he ran a 2:53, so he did amazing. He had a week off. He went out on Friday, so he had 5 days off. A nice easy run. Sunday, nice easy run. He was going to come out with me on Tuesday, and whilst I was doing my workout, he was going to do a warm up. And he tried to warm up and the legs like 8 days afterwards, and he had to go home. Couldn't do it. His legs were absolutely battered. And that's 3 weeks between Manchester and London. So it's got to, we'll jump on to Rich's next point, but that was just something that I thought of, like people doing two so close together. There's got to be that point of you take one seriously, not so seriously, because as he said, he's going to do London now probably just for the enjoyment, whereas he might have thought about trying to race London. But I think that, yeah, anyway, sorry.
No,
I have seen people, sorry Rich, I have seen some,
so I think you're right. If you've got marathons as your target, do the first one as your big effort, because regardless of how well you recover on the second one, you're still going to have that first one in your legs, aren't you? And you're going to be tired and fatigued. But the other thing to think about with back-to-back marathons is some people are training for bigger distances and they're looking at ultras, and they're maybe using back-to-back marathons as a test of their ability to run for that far, for that long, in quick succession, to see how they're going to fare over the ultra.
That's a good point, mate. That's a good point.
Yeah.
If you're doing that, you're not going to be smacking out a PB effort, but you're going to be, using those as more training runs. And I think, that's a bit more realistic if that's what you're aiming towards. But yeah, so just jumping onto the live chat, we've had a couple of comments. So Lee Ratcliffe is about to book Brighton for next year, as well as a few ultras. And Proper Jogger saying that Brighton was his focus and he's going out to enjoy London, no pressure. And that's
that makes sense.
What he was saying is hit the first one. That's probably a good shout. Well done.
Yeah.
So Roadrunner Rossi has asked, what's people's thoughts on London in general? Because for him watching it seems so busy before, even trying to get a place for it, and it puts him off. Katie, you've done London a few times. What would you say about that one?
I must admit, I have only done London as a marathon. I have done, almost done the Kenya marathon, but it got rained off at like 23 miles. But for me, every time that I talk about London to my clients, it gives me goosebumps because, okay, yes, it is really busy, and I'm very interested to know what New York's going to be like, because I know that Donato talks very highly of the American marathons. But for me, London, I think I've done it from all different aspects. Like the first London that I did was for charity. And as a beginner and a novice, walking in, it's just like a small fish in a massive pond. And it's just so overwhelming, but in a good way. And I just think that the support that it is, London Marathon do so well in terms of their PR and marketing and building it up as an event. They do it incredibly well. You can't fault them for that. They do create a hype around it. But I love it because some people argue that it's a lot for people that just jog it and it's not a serious marathon. But for me, the fact that you can raise so much money, it encourages and inspires people to run and just brings people together. Like, some of my best memories from London are actually running through like East London at the start. On the first marathon I did, the weather was really nice. It wasn't too hot, but there was people that you could tell they were not runners, but they were there to support their friends and family. They were dancing outside pubs, dancing on the tables with ciders, cheering people on. Like, the fact that an event like that can bring people together is just unbelievable. So it is busy, you have to factor that in, but I just think that I've experienced other races and I just haven't experienced anything else like it. So I am interested to see what the American marathons are like, but for me, the London Marathon is just so iconic. I know Donata's probably gonna laugh because I'm just one of those people that just
wait till you arrive in New York, Katie.
I just fall
if you think London's big, wait till you get to New York.
Exactly. So I don't really have much to compare it to, but I've done it as a charity runner. I've now done it as a club runner, and I just think it's special for me. The build up to it, going to the expo, it's still I love it. So yeah, I think it's great, and so I think of running it as a privilege because it's difficult to get into. So
yeah, and a bit further up the chat, Lee Ratcliffe said he didn't really fancy London. So what do you reckon, Lee, after Katie's impassioned speech there, has that changed your mind? And Mark Willis in the chat has said, honestly, do London. It is busy, but it's huge and it's unique. So there's another recommendation. So yeah, just coming back onto the topic of tapering then. So we talked about somebody where their training's gone really well. So we've now going to move on maybe to somebody where it hasn't gone so well for all manner of reasons. You might not have had the time to train properly just because generally life can get in the way, or you've been ill or you've been injured and you're feeling a little bit underprepared, maybe not as ready as you'd hoped, and you're a bit worried about that. That might change the way you taper, and it also might change the way you approach the race. So who wants to speak from experience on that one?
I've been working with people in that position as a coach, so I can talk about it from that perspective. I don't think I've ever gone into a race feeling really unprepared. I think it depends on the level of unprepared. I'm part of quite a few forums on Facebook, and there's some people that have only done about 8 miles in training because of injury and illness. I think if you're not that far in training and your body's not used to that level of exercise, I wouldn't recommend doing it. I think try and defer your entry. Like, it's not worth putting your body through that if you're really underprepared. However, I have had some clients that have had to take a few weeks off due to like niggles and things like that. And I think the main thing is that just because you're in your taper, don't then do more because of you feel like you've got to cram it in. So I know that some people might miss, say, their 20-mile run. If you've missed your 20-mile run, then don't do it in your taper. That's just really stupid. You need to treat your taper like you would have had a really good training block. You still need to do everything else that everyone else is doing. And another big thing, I think, is just to manage your expectations on the time and just try and enjoy it. Because I've had a client of mine in Manchester and unfortunately had about 4 or 5 weeks out of training because of it. And then after that, obviously, we had to maintain and manage their injury. And they had the best experience because I saw them at the start of the race and I just said, just enjoy it. You can't ever get your first marathon experience back. And they loved it. They loved every minute, and their race photos pictured that. And yeah, okay, it was tough. Don't get me wrong. It was hard for them because they hadn't trained as much as what they'd hoped they would, but they loved it. And they're already talking about their next one. They're in for Chicago and they can't wait to get stuck in again. So yeah, that's the biggest thing is don't do more in your training, in your taper phase because you now feel better because you've missed it. Don't worry about what you have missed and just lower your expectations or manage your expectations and just try and enjoy 26.2 miles if you can enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's absolutely brilliant advice. And I think I've had an injury myself where my right foot, the metatarsal arch support there was painful to run. I did it at a park run maybe 4 weeks before London, and then I couldn't really walk on it for 2 weeks. And then basically by the time I got to London, the injury wasn't ready. I should not have run with hindsight, but I went ahead anyway, and I had 26.2 miles of searing pain. It took me hours to get round. It was agony, and I hated every minute of it. And I've done London 6 times, and that one, I wish I could take it back, because it sort of spoilt it for me in a way, because it wasn't what I wanted it to be, and it was just painful and horrible. And I think if you are genuinely injured at this point, and you know you are deep down, you've got to be honest with yourself. You can still defer that place in London till next year. Once you pick that bib up from the expo, you can't defer it. So you've got to make that call now, really, or within the next week or so, and be honest with yourself. If you're not ready, you know, don't feel the pressure of charity. Oh, I've got all these people relying on me. All these people have donated and all that. At the end of the day, your health is really important. So don't hurt yourself to do it. You can always defer and just do it next year, and still do what you promised everyone you would do. Just do it 12 months later. And what do you recommend, Ian Donato? You got any tips on that, going into marathons, you know, underprepared or injured or anything?
The injury one, from experience, having just pulled out of one, is if you've, and I've seen friends who've pulled out of London already, and all I can say is, echoing exactly what you said, Rich, is that from hindsight, having run last year Boston and London, coming out of injury and not having done enough, and also New York, I think 4 weeks before I was injured. But if I go through those slides, all the occasions I speak to a professional physio. So the first call is always go and refer to a professional physio. Now, I know it costs money. I'd rather spend a bit of money to get a professional look at what the injury is. And the New York one, that was a call to go for it. And that's obviously having done the right rehab. But obviously with a couple of weeks ago, Manchester was definitely pull out. Unless you want to do some long-term injury. And the same happened to a friend of mine with London. We kept telling him, you got to withdraw, and he didn't want to. You know, he got charity, exactly what you said. I've got charities dependent on me, and he has deferred to next year. So you've got to think of your body, and I always just say, refer to a physio. And if a professional physio says you can get round and enjoy it, then go for it. If not, you know, if you have any doubts, as Rich said, I can't think of anything worse of smashing your body through 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours because you're injured and you can't get round in any speed that you wanted to.
Yeah, it's really hard. Like Katie said, you know, London are very good at building up the hype around the race, and everyone's doing it. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's on social media and on Strava, and you feel like you get massive FOMO by pulling out, because you think, well, what am I missing? But at the end of the day, you've got to do it. If you've got to do it, you can't hurt yourself. You know, and
I'm glad you said the word. I'm glad you said the word FOMO there, Rich. Yeah, the fear of missing out. It is quite overhyped. And to be honest, whilst I did do a video of being injured and having to miss on Manchester and Boston, I mean, it was Boston on Monday. Some people said, oh, it stinks. But to be honest, I'm quite phlegmatic about it now and quite relaxed. I'm out on my bike enjoying it. And you've got to look at priorities. You know, there are other marathons and you can race another time. But I think, as you've said, it's probably hyped too much. And if you have got an injury and you've seen all these people who are having a great time, then maybe that doesn't help. I may need to do a vlog about how to get over the setbacks, but yeah, I could do a whole story on that. So I don't know whether Andy's nodding his head there, singing and dancing. Did he want to add anything on coming up to an injury or ill?
I'm just singing in my head, mate.
Well, we've got a bit of a conversation developing in the chat here about blisters and socks and trainers and things. So is it Lee? Lee's suffering with blisters on the balls of his feet after a half. Any advice? And then people are talking about could be a problem with his shoes and trainers and the combination of the two. We've got the proper jogger using the Injinji socks to try and reduce blisters. And then there's talk of looking for wider shoes. So,
I don't think wider shoes would help so much with blisters on the balls of your feet. I've suffered with narrow shoes because I've got really wide feet. I suffer with narrow shoes and I get blisters on the outside of my little toe. Shoe is really tight, or maybe on the outside of my big toe. But in terms of the ball of your feet, that's more a case of the friction of your foot in the shoe sliding back and forth. So if it's on the ball of your foot, it's going to be either because your shoe's too big, there's too much toe room, and your foot isn't locked down in your shoe enough. Try the lace trick where you can really lock it, because that happens when your foot lands and then slides in your shoe.
Yeah,
it's rubbing back and forth. So that's not going to be so much a width issue, but width issue.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
I
Andy's right.
Sorry,
Lock
go,
it, lock
Donato.
it. Yeah, I totally agree. You've got to lock the heel, and that's why you can Google it, whatever, and look at how to lock and how you put the laces on there. But the foot needs to be locked in the shoe. I've not heard of heel blisters. That sounds quite not good.
No.
So have a try of that. Sounds painful as well.
I only
I
get
personally,
blisters when I race hard. So in my normal training, I'm absolutely fine. And then I think it's just the fact that I'm running faster. So it's normally after like a half or a marathon, I get really bad blisters. So
do you change your footwear though, Katie? Do you have racing shoes?
No. I train in my racing shoes. But it's always, I like rotate my trainers, but it's just always, I think it's the fact that I must run harder and my feet get hotter.
Yeah, could be.
So I've got some like anti-glide stuff, so I'm going to try that out. And I might even just put blister plasters on my feet before I've started, just to try it. But I think it's just, for me, it's just must be my feet get hotter when I'm racing, and that's why.
And that's what causes blisters, hot feet. So,
I think that's it. So I'm obviously just running too fast.
I use a brand of sock called 1,000 Mile socks. They're a twin skin sock, so the idea is that the rubbing occurs between the two layers of the sock, not between your foot and the shoe. And that tends to work for me, if that's helpful to anybody.
I was going to say, Rich, I once used those for a long walk and blistered terribly. So I came back and got a refund because it said guaranteed no blisters.
There's no right answer for everyone out there, is there? I've just noticed that Road Runner Rossi is saying he's just pulled out of his home marathon in Belfast due to getting knocked down on a long run. Is that like by a vehicle or something? Are you okay, mate? What happened? That sounds pretty mental. And then we've got Lee saying, Katie, I agree, I did suffer before, and it's only in the last 2 weeks where I've really pushed. So he's agreeing that pushing himself could be what's causing his blisters.
The secret for, well, it's not a secret, but the best thing to get is Compeed blister plasters.
Yeah. Compeed all the way.
Yeah, after I have them in my kit bag so that I'm prepared now. Even like
are they those like green packeted ones that they give out in goodie bags at the end of races sometimes?
No,
it's a bit late at the end of a race, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, no, they're perfect for like a few days afterwards for the recovery.
I'm going to get my Compeed and socks. Bear with.
He's off. So, right, it's 9 o'clock. So we've been on half an hour. I know, Katie, you've got an early start. Are you all right just for a couple more minutes?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm all good.
Okay, cool. Power through.
Yeah, I'll power through.
Okay, so I'm just checking. There's nothing else really that anybody wants us to talk about. Oh, we got Nathan on from Seattle. Hello, Nathan. And Sandra's just back from a run and joined in. Hey, Sandra.
Is there anything else in terms of the people that are watching? Any other questions they've got about tapering for us?
Yeah, I think that's it. If we've got any more questions on tapering, that'd be great. And if not, we'll wind it up once Donato's back with his socks. Here he is.
Here's the Compeed. Other brands are available, but I swear by these. But the thing to be aware of is if you are doing, especially endurance runners, ultra runners, is if you put these on, I've heard of people who blister on the blister, and that's not good at all. So, but yeah, if you start feeling heat, is to put these on as you're feeling the heat, not afterwards. And in terms of socks, I just use these ultra thin ones, and I think they were called marathon socks, but I had the same issues as yourself, Katie, because I used to do a lot of walking in thick socks and my feet would overheat, blistered everywhere. And then I was trying lots of different socks and accidentally came across these, and they are ultra thin, and they let my feet breathe. And the only blisters I get is from the rubbing, because sometimes the feet, when they rub together, so you can put tapes in between the toes to stop them rubbing. The only
place I get them is in between the toes. It's not like a hide or anything like that. It's just down to the fact that my feet must swell because I'm running faster.
Exactly, yeah.
And I guess every time that I've done London, it has been quite warm, so the heat.
Yeah. But the heat causes it. So I remember suggesting to when I was over in LA, there was people I've met over there, some runners, and they complained about blisters all the time. And when I said, because they were wearing thick socks or the dual socks, as Richard explained, and I explained the science of blisters and heat, and thick socks causes heat. And then when I said to them, you need to wear thin ones, it was counterintuitive to protecting their feet. But the trainers are protecting the feet, not the socks. So if you've got comfortable running shoes, the socks are almost incidental. It's, you know, you put something in, it's a nice thin layer to allow it to move. But anyway, enough of socks and compedes.
And Road Runner Rossi's just come back and he says he's okay, but he's suffering with pain on his lower shin and was out of running for 3 weeks. He's tried a 5K race on Saturday. There's still nowhere near ready for training again. The joys, he says. Yeah, well, I hope you get well soon, mate, because that does sound
well
really
soon, mate.
serious.
Not good.
And I suppose tapering's not really on the cards for you at the moment, but hopefully it will be in the near future if you're feeling well again for your next race.
The proper joggers asked about pre-race carb loading. Any tips? I think that'd be quite a good question for us all to cover.
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah. Go for it.
I'm sure we all have our own routines.
Who wants to go first?
I'll let one of you two go first.
I'll go on, Andy. You haven't really spoken much. Are you too busy watching something?
I'm dancing.
Yeah, I'll do the carb loading first then. Here we go. Here's the tips on carb loading, because I do love my pizza. So temptation in the week before, we often hear that you need to carb load the whole week before. The thing with carb loading is not to binge eat on pizzas and pasta for the whole week. That's the last thing you want to be doing, because then you'll arrive at the start of the race pretty bloated and eating too much. So for me, I tend to just carry on eating as normal. So I don't overeat, but I just add a bit more pizza instead of chicken or whatever. So instead of having a chicken curry, I'll go for a pizza or pasta. So it's just adding more carbohydrate meals in the days, but not overdoing it. I think certainly for the meal the night before, you know, there's not a 3-course dinner. It's just a bowl of pasta. Now I appreciate Katie, when I met up with you guys, I wasn't racing that day, so I had a 3-course meal. But if I was racing, I would have just had the pasta.
Oh, I had a 3-course meal. I was carb loading for the
10K.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and there's some science about carb loading only a few days before, not the whole week. But I think that's more for elite runners who are, you know, their weight, you know, every minuscule kilo is very race dependent for them. So Mo Farah is obviously counting every little thing. But for me, I don't care how much pepperoni and pizza salami is thrown on it. It's a pizza. So, but yeah, there is some science in that, but not overdo it. That's my only key thing.
I totally agree with everything you've just said, Donato. I think people use carb loading as an excuse to eat something and post a picture on social media, like, yay, carb loading. The same with all my clients. I tell them to eat as normal as they would have been doing in their normal routine, because they've been training like that the whole time. Everyone must have trialed out a pre-race meal, so kind of stick with that as similar. Again, as you start to increase, again, it's just increasing the carbohydrate intake at meals. So swapping out stuff and putting carbohydrates. Sometimes as well with I do snack, and people often don't understand that things like fruit has quite a lot of carbohydrate in it. So you can still be snacking on things like fruits, things like rice cake or flapjack bars and things like that. So snacks, you can increase the carbohydrate intake on there as well. But yeah, not overdoing it, because you will feel heavy and sluggish. It is natural like that a little bit, but obviously, as Donato said, just don't overdo it. So stick with your normal routine, just a slight bit of extra carb.
Yeah.
And then just follow everything else. Don't change the system.
It's funny you touched on the pre-race meal. Obviously, you would be certainly I rehearse the meals for me long runs. You know, if I'm running 20 miles or 15 miles, the night before I'll be practicing my pre-race meal. So that will be the same sort of thing. So I'm not going to try anything new on the race day. So if my pre-race meal is a chicken curry and naan bread, that's what I would have had on the pre-long runs. And if that works for me, that's what I'll stick with. If it's a pizza, then I'll stick with that. So
I'm not sure chicken curry would work for me, mate. You know, what goes in must come out, and you do have to bear that in mind with your pre-race meal, don't you? So
yeah, definitely not have a peanut butter toasted sandwich before the race, because that will really get the things going. Yep. Yeah, peanut
you
butter
mentioned
for
Mo
breakfast.
Farah. You
No,
mentioned
no,
Mo
no.
Farah just there.
Yeah.
We had a question earlier on.
Is he going to do a 204? Yeah.
Can Mo Farah go sub 204 at London? But I'll throw in there as well. Do you think he can win?
No.
No.
No chance. If
I think if Eliud Kipchoge's running, then no, he can't win.
Well, also there's a lot of new Ethiopian runners coming through. If you looked at Boston Marathon finish on Monday, 3 people were sprinting to the finish.
Finish.
Sprinting to the finish. You look at that sprint finish. The Ethiopian was in the lead by a whisker, and the other 2, I think a Kenyan guy, pushed him all away. And literally 2 meters to go, the Ethiopian bottled it, and the Kenyan passed him. It was.
I didn't like the way he stuck his hand out to try and stop him getting past.
That
was like real desperation, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was like a Michael Schumacher tactic.
Yeah,
in Formula One.
It was definitely.
But yeah, they sprinted the last from Ballston Street at the top of Ballston Street, which is a good half mile sprint for 3 of them. That was insane.
End of a marathon though. That's just.
But there's some new Ethiopian guys coming through. The lady who won Boston, Ethiopian lady. I think there's something going on there with the Ethiopian athletes that is really coming to the fore. So I don't know if there's any new Ethiopian guys at London. Obviously, some of them were already at Boston. There's some top new Ethiopians at Dubai as well. But I don't know, what was Mo Farah's time at Chicago? Because he won that one. Was that a 204?
205, 206 or something?
Yeah, I think it's 205.
I genuinely don't think he's going to go sub. I think he ran 206. He will go. I think he'll go 205. I think he'll go 205. He's going to keep chipping away a minute at a time because he went from 207 to 208 down to 206 ish. I think 205 is a sensible. I think the marathon is all about patience, and he's just got to keep like Kipchoge, keep doing each one. Keep chipping away, not have the expectation of going and winning, but just going, right, I'm going to get a PB and keep chipping away at it. You might get a 204, but it will be a 204 something, it won't be a sub. And then maybe next year or the year after, he can expect to go sub 204. But I think he's got to be sensible. I mean, last year they went off at 10, they hit the half split in 101 something, and then he finished in 206. So it was quite for an elite. And I know it was hot, but it was quite a big positive split.
Yeah. He didn't have his drinks either, did he?
Suicidal pace. So this year, if he does the same thing again, I'm just thinking, why? Do you know what? Go for 102, sorry, and then go for a 204. You know, be sensible, because he'll get much more out of that than Kipchoge.
Yeah, I think there was some issues with his drinks as well during.
Yeah, he missed one, didn't he?
And he was getting a bit annoyed, which obviously doesn't help with your mental state or whatever. But totally agree, Andy. I think taking a minute off each year, a minute is a big chunk of time when you're up at those.
At that level, it's massive.
Yeah, it's massive level. So it will take time. Although his tactics at Chicago were pretty slick, and obviously it worked for him. I don't know if he can play the same tactics with Kipchoge and the other guys.
Problem is, he's going to have Kipchoge in his sights, and he's used to winning. Therefore, he's going to want to stick with him. So
yeah.
It was all about him versus Rupp at Chicago. Old training partners, who's going to come out on top, But Rupp isn't a 201 marathoner. He's a similar level.
Yeah.
Whereas if Mo sees that competition ahead, he's going to think, I've got to try and stick with that. And that's where I think he just needs to play it sensible. You saw the women's race last year. That lady bolted out of the blocks and she faded from first to like 5th or 6th, dragging her backside over the line. And all those women came past their last bit. And that woman that was second, she just did such a sensible race. She wasn't even in the lead pack. She just sat behind the lead pack, ran her own race, passed all the lead pack, played it well because of the weather, and won. And that's all Mo needs to do. He just needs to run his own race.
Run your own race.
Yeah.
Run your own race.
Okay, right. So this question is going to be the last question then, and it's come from Sandra. She said, would you say that a 5.5 mile time trial run would be too much 7 days before a half marathon? And she's done this over the last couple of months and always does it on the same day. I think that's fine. 5.5 miles 7 days before, that's fine. That's like a tapered down long run, isn't it? It should be fine.
The day before a marathon?
No, 7 days.
7 days. Oh yeah, that's perfectly fine. Yeah. Sorry,
That's
I
like
thought
doing
the
back-to-back
day before.
races. I've done back-to-back races where I've done a 10K then a half marathon before.
Yeah, I've done. March was crazy for me this year as well. I've done back-to-back races, and it's just about the recovery in between, I think.
Yeah, a week before is okay, 5K or 10K, but nothing longer if you're racing it.
And Morgan, yes, I will say good luck to your dad, Jason, who is doing a marathon. So let us know which marathon he's doing. Send us a tweet or something after this video. Right, I think we're going to have to wrap up there because we've gone on a bit longer than planned. I know Katie's got to be up early. So thanks very much for coming on the channel today, everybody. And,
Thank you.
And don't forget, we've got Clean Coach Katie, Donato the Running Guru, and Andy the FOD Runner. All of their links to their YouTube channels and such are below in the video description. If you'd like to go over there and subscribe to their channels, please feel free to do so. Please do give this video a thumbs up. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.